Welcome back. My name's Stuart Hudnall. We got another episode of School Story. Today, we're doing another educator book review. I'm really excited about this one. This is one of my favorite books. It's Culturize by Mr. Jimmy Casas. It's published by Dave Burgess Consulting. They've got a lot of great books out there in the education fields. And the premise of this book is to give principals and school leaders the tools to build a thriving culture of learning and growth. And who doesn't want that? So let's jump into the book. First, though, let's talk a little bit about what we're talking about on our episode today. So we got 6 segments. First one, we're going to talk about the book. Segment 2, we're going to dive into the book. Segment 3, we're going to do a review of the book. 4, how does it apply to education, educators, schools, classrooms? Number 5, we've got a question from a listener that we're going to answer. And then always my favorite part, segment 6, where we do the 5-3-1 wrap up. 5 takeaways, 3 quotes, and 1 thing you can implement today, tomorrow, next week, whenever you're listening to this. So the author, Jimmy Casas, this book was fundamental for me when I started my administration career, and I credit a lot to this guy. So about the book, what it's aiming to do is try to provide some research-based strategies to shape a positive student-centered school culture. In fact, the tagline is "Every student, every day, whatever it takes," and he continues to emphasize that throughout the book, throughout all the different chapters. Uh, what he's seen is how the right culture, and if you're listening to this, you've seen it too, fosters creativity, innovation, and belonging. But we've also seen where it doesn't happen, and most of the time, that's because it's a top-down problem. If it doesn't start with the top, with the right type of school culture, it's going to be really hard to see that positive influence reach throughout the school. So the book, it's speaking specifically to principals and administrators looking to actively build an environment where every students feel validated. Could be used for teachers, but it is geared more towards administration. When we think of curriculum, what I like about what Culturize does is it reminds us that culture drives everything. He has lots of research, in fact, quite extensive research into motivation, mindset, and leadership psychology. But what they also do is they blend it with their real world expertise, being in the classroom and having experience, really being a consultant in a lot of schools. So in the end, they come up with a really cool practical playbook that's built on studies and experiences. So segment 2, digging into the book. And what they do is, let's jump into a few of the key themes that they cover. What it really emphasizes is that school culture stems from a clear set of core values. Without those values, direction isn't going to happen. It's going to be pretty listless. He says that there needs to be a clear set of core values, and he talks about those core values are going to decide the decision of behaviors. And he challenges you, what are your 3 or 4 pillars? What do you want your school to embody? What are those big pillars that you're building on? And clarifying these up front is going to help maintain that vision and consistency, because as you make decisions, you're going to compare it to those pillars to see how it fits against them and whether or not it works. Another big one is building trust and psychological safety. He talks about how being vulnerable and relatable as a leader is critical in this, and that if teachers and students don't feel secure taking risks in the name of learning, you're not going to have a positive student or teacher culture. But it does require patience, empathy, and a lot of resiliency. It also focuses on empowerment. It talks about when we give staff and students agency in shaping culture, they're going to feel more invested, which makes sense. We want to hear directly from the teachers and students what they want their culture to be, what they want their culture to have, what it should feel like, what it should be like, involving those stakeholders, reaching out, seeking the input, and then building the consensus. Within the classroom, though, teachers, they need to have their autonomy to personalize instruction. What's really cool is when you can see students also taking leadership roles within those classrooms. I work at a CTE campus now, and because it is more hands-on and job focused, it's really fun walking into a classroom and seeing kids that are not just leaders, but they're kind of quote unquote the bosses, for that class, for that week, for that month. So it's really cool to see that actually in place. Um, when you're giving them that empowerment, they're going to step up to it. It also talks about motivational strategies, promotes tapping into autonomy, mastery, purpose. People ultimately want control over their purposes. And if they don't have the control over their choices, why improve? Because you're just going to feel like you're running up a slippery slope. And by being a leader that motivates that, you're doing that with recognizing and modeling that hard work. So segment 3, we're talking about the book review. So the main ideas, we've talked about some of the main ideas, but let's look at the strengths and weaknesses of the book. What did I think about it? Spoiler, I already said I loved it. But there definitely are parts, that can be improved, that could make it a little bit better in the long run. So my favorite part about Culturize is really just how practical it is, the practical advice that's all throughout it. He includes specific reflection questions, culture diagnostics, action plans. He makes it easy for us, the reader, to figure out how we can implement those strategies in our own school. Also, another strength is the examples and case studies. There are so many throughout that, depending on where you come from, your size of your school, the dynamics, you're going to find examples within the book that really connect and make sense to you. When you're hearing directly from those administrators and teachers, it really does add that balance to the field, and it really shows how they work. In regards to weakness, the only thing I would have liked to see a little bit more is, while there is a variety, there are certain types of examples and structures that aren't there from different populations or different types of groups. And that would have been nice in the book. But I mean, if you really want to dive into that, there's a great book we'll probably review later. It's called We Got This by Cornelius Minor. It's a great book that dives a little bit deeper into that. So what does it look like? How do we apply? How are we applying this to education? Even with just the little minor critiques, it really does. The book offers profound insights into how you can shape your school culture, what you can do to improve it and make it better. And not just with big pie in the sky ideas, which it does have some of those, but also it provides framework, really some invaluable framework for how you can diagnose. You can take a look at what your current culture is, and they also share some questions that you can reflect on to really question what are your core values, trust level, motivations, and more within that school. It also talks about how you can involve staff and students in cultural initiatives, student focus groups, principal roundtables, cultural committees, shared vision planning, teacher created norms. There's so many awesome examples of how you can co-create culture within the school. And for leaders, it was a nonstop read about how the application can be used. Talked about mindsets with leading with empathy first, coaching on observations and feedback cycles. It even had some sample newsletters and questions for staff surveys. So it really was a framework and something that you would be able to use and refer back to when trying to lead a school. All right, segment 5. We actually have a question coming in from a fan, Sandra. So this is our listeners' corner, and she asks, "What is one thing leaders can do to immediately start improving school culture?" And reading this book really does give you a good mindset in what you can do. Really, because it is such a big thing. I had a high school principal that talked about, especially being a high school principal, it's like driving a large cruise ship. You don't make quick turns. You're not a speedboat. You're not going to have the major changes, at least initially or effectively. But with small turns, with small changes, it can happen. And that's exactly what they emphasize in the book. Talk about those small, consistent actions, how they're going to lead to big change. One simple but high impact idea that I liked was just something simple as grading students each morning, um, modeling that care and connection for the entire school. It is a little thing, but it also signals to the rest of the school and to the rest of the community that it's a priority for you. I remember one time walking the halls after lunch with my principal, and he stopped to pick up a piece of trash. And it was interesting because he didn't do it to be seen, but there were definitely people that saw him do it. And they had a mindset shift of, well, if the principal's going to do it, I probably should pick up, that trash as well. When kids see and it's modeled, but also when they feel seen, that sets the tone for learning. Even just simply standing outside welcoming students, I've seen the difference it's made in individual teachers. Also within administration level, what can that look like? So those small steps really can lead to the big transformations that you're looking for. So my favorite segment 6, our 5-3-1. Let's wrap up with our 5 key takeaways, 3 favorite quotes, and 1 actionable step. So the 5 takeaways are: 1, identify core values; 2, build trust and safety; 3, give staff and students agency; 4, motivate your people through autonomy and purpose; and 5, lead by example. My 3 favorite quotes, short ones, but really some powerful ones. Culture is not something you do, it's something you are. People, especially kids, they've got a good BS meter. They can tell when you're faking it, and they're going to call you out for it. Uh, Second quote, strive for progress, not perfection. It's really easy to get caught up and forget that we're just trying to move forward. We're not expecting perfection. No one really is. And the third quote, when adults change, everything changes. Sometimes we forget that when we make the change, the kid's going to follow, and they're not going to make the change without us really making the change. So actionable step, the last one, what you can do is ask your school community, ask them for input, ask them for what they think the core values are of your school. Does it align with what you think they are or what you want them to be? Um, Find feedback from all stakeholders to finalize those 3 to 5 pillars to uh, build what you want your school to be. That's the end of the book review. Can't recommend it enough. 2 thumbs up, 5 stars. I I love it, and it's one that I keep referring back to. Um, Thanks for riding on this gem-packed journey episode, diving into the education book, Culturize. Many thanks to Jimmy Casas. I've yet to meet him, maybe one day. I love the leadership lessons he's got in that. Uh, Join me next time as we explore the groundbreaking book, The Innovator's Mindset by George Couros. Love that one too. Talks about how we inspire that innovation, the innovative spark in our school. Send any questions in, comment, leave a 5-star review. Really helps us. Until next time, fellow learners, this is Stuart signing off. Go out, culturize your school. See you.